Hi, it's Ileana. So today I'm going to ask Source Creator some questions about Tartaria and Hyperborea, the Hyperboreans, where they come from. And I'm just going to say a few things about how channeling works before we get started with Source Creator. Every channeler has their own unique individual frequency, noetic energy that they're able to hold in the channeling session to allow the being to come through, positive being who they're channeling. So the percentage of the channeling could be very high based on how the channeler is feeling. It could be lower in frequency. It really depends on the channeler and their ability to channel their own unique gift to channel, to hold the frequency of the channeling. So I do channeling that is connecting to Source Creator of all the multiverse, of all the universes in the multiverse. This is the Source Creator. I'm not connecting to any creator gods, any type of other beings. I am connecting to Source Creator, the one Source Creator of the multiverse. That is the energy that I'm connecting to and what I'm channeling as I'm asking questions of Source Creator. So I am the requester in the channeling, and I am also the conduit for the channeling itself. So I am holding a frequency of both, I guess, to explain how I'm doing this. I'm holding the channeling source as the requester and the channeler. When I'm doing this particular type of channeling, that's the frequency I'm holding. So it is the energy of the frequency I can hold for the channeling. It is as pure as it can be, and it is the ability that I have to hold that frequency. So I'm both the requester and the channel and Source Creator coming in. And again, channeling can be done in many different forms. It can be intuitive channeling, trance channeling, mediumship channeling. I am doing channeling by connecting to a pure positive being for Source Creator. So I wanted to explain that and start the channeling. Source Creator, what can you please tell me about Tartaria and Hyperborea in the Hyperboreans? I had heard that Tartaria was an ancient civilization that had advanced flight capabilities. They worked with crystals, they built beautiful cities, and they were taken out about in the 16 to 1800s with flooding, and their civilization was wiped off the face of the earth. The Hyperboreans I heard that they're the tall beings with red and blonde hair, and they are on an island in parts of Europe. So they're still there, but they came from inner earth, and they have also cities in inner earth. And they also have advanced capabilities of thought consciousness, and they take care of nature and connect to nature. They have blonde hair, red hair, up to 14 feet tall. They're strong, the Hyperboreans. So this is what I know about Tartaria and Hyperboreans. Source Creator, what can you tell me about the nature of Tartaria, where it originated, who the beings were, the nature of Hyperborea and Hyperboreans, where they came from and what the beings are in Hyperborea? Ileana, the Tartarians have been on Earth since 200,000 years ago. They are a genetic conglomeration of humanoids, Earth humans, and they're also a result of the galactic humanoid beings that came to Earth with the human experiment to amalgamate the highest human DNA with ET DNA for evolution of intelligence, for evolution of strength, evolution of capacity of spirit to come within the full soul of experience. The Tartarians were able to download vast amounts of information from their spirit energy into their physical bodies. Tartarians were up to 8 feet tall. They were extremely intelligent from their genetics. And again, they're offshoots from the remnants of Atlantis and Lemuria and Mu. It was a big continent that had sank because of the infighting from Atlanteans and attacking Lemurians and vice versa. There was nuclear war fallout on the planet about 11,000 years ago and 9,000 years ago. So those are the remnants of Atlantean and also Lemurian civilizations. They formed Tartaria. So they were indeed partly galactic. They came from Mintaka. They had come from Maldak. They had come from Pleiades. They had come from many different systems in your known universe. And they participated in a soul spiritual evolution of connecting to spirit of the soul, to know the true soul of who you are in the multiverse. They had all their memories intact as they came in as souls into the physical body to experience spirit and soul and physicality. So they, in Tartaria, they had these beautiful cities 200,000 years ago until approximately the 1800s, 1811, where these mud floods took out their cities. Now, those mud floods were not natural. They were energy directed to stop the cities from flourishing. The Tartarians are remnants of the Atlanteans and Lemurians who had survived the nuclear war fallout catastrophes. Some had gone to inner Earth. Some had rebuilt. Tartarians are a mix of those peoples. They are extremely smart. They built cities. They had these beautiful crystalline devices that were set up in cores within the cities, within core generators to power the cities. So they had electromagnetic abilities to create unlimited energy, frequency, just as the Atlanteans had and the Lemurians. It's the same technology. They kept advancing it. So they were able to expand their life force frequency and live from 300 to 400 years. Because these crystalline devices, the crystal fire coming from these crystals, had the capacity to expand their life force. So their cities were built on similar schematics as the Atlantean cities. They had what you call flying cars. They had the ability to levitate and even travel upwards in the air. They kept meticulous records of how they had continued to evolve after fall of Atlantis and Lemuria. So the Tartarians, they were in Europe, for the most part, what is now Europe. They built beautiful cities there. There's even evidence of this that was brought to North America in the intricate and elaborate monuments that were built in the North America, even after the fall of Tartaria. The mystery schools preserved their teachings. So the mud floods that wiped out the Tartarian cities and their civilization, it was done because the powers that be that still control the structure on this planet, which you call the elites, they wanted no evidence of the advancements of Tartaria. So that's why they directed energy beam frequency that caused the mud slides. Those mudslides, that was not natural. And that is what wiped out Tartarians, because their consciousness allowed them to store large amounts of information. They had a unique connection to 7 different universes that they were connected to download information from the multiverse. And they were getting ready to release the information of this, how to build advanced cities that work with nature and do not cause pollution and do not cause any type of damage or stripping of natural resources to the planet. They were getting ready to release this. However, the ones that control the planet, the elites, they wanted an industrial revolution without free energy, without zero-point technology. So it didn't benefit them to have that come in from the Tartarians. That's why they were taken out earlier. Now their schematics of the cities, the technology, the crystalline energy, the crystal fire, if you will, within the crystals itself, this all came from Atlantis. And some of it from Lemuria, the crystal generators, how to keep the crystals stable within the generation fields. That came from Lemuria as well. So that technology has been preserved in the mystery schools. The Tartarians had built the first of what they had called the step pyramids. For them, it was the pyramids were built in layers. They weren't all as big as the Egyptian pyramids at the Giza Plateau that came later. So they built smaller style pyramids as points of the center in their cities to power the energetic frequencies of the cities. They had cities that had domed cupolas on some of the bigger structures. They had cityscapes that were not built from concrete. It was built of a material much what has the properties of gold, but it was mixed with other minerals to sustain long-lasting buildings that would not crumble. But the consistency of gold as a frequency was in the building structures themselves, the pyramids acting as center points of energetic frequency, as power converters, interconnecting energy in these cities with the flying machines flying above, delivering supplies, delivering people, acting as transport. So, in crystalline energy sources, the firestones, in the middle of some of these pyramids and other structures powering the cities. Imagine a firestone crystal has the power of the sun, the same frequency, to generate almost unlimited energy. 0 point, tapping into 0 point frequency. This is what the Tartarians had access to. This came from Atlantis as these technologies, and they maintained them and had the same knowledge, so they could rebuild their own cities. And evidence of Tartarian cities were being found up to 1850. Their cities, vessels, and bodies of large humanoids, which has all been covered up as evidence because they were erased from the human record. They were like the second era of humanity. And they were highly evolved. Again, they worked with crystals, they worked with holographic technology. They could build buildings that would not crumble. The architecture was massive, the pyramids. And their knowledge of building pyramids, buildings, that all came from Atlantis because they originated in parts of the Atlantean outposts, colonies. So the evidence of the Tartarian civilization spanned hundreds of thousands of years in what they had accomplished and done. The Tartarians had been a balanced civilization. They took care of their people. There was no famine, hunger, wars, disease in their communities. As a civilization, they were grounded and peaceful. Their thought consciousness, spirit to soul connection was very advanced and strong. So they were not easy to infiltrate or remove as a civilization until the elites started to try to introduce the industrial civilization to planet beyond the 1800s. So this would be the time of encroachment on the Tartarian lands, setting fires, setting energy beam weapons, directing flooding, mudslides. Even in the 1800s, 1900s, the elites had that kind of energy beam technology. Think of secret societies who've kept these records for thousands of years. They've had this technology for a long time, and they did target Tartaria for destruction and evisceration with fires, mudslides, earthquakes, to completely take down anything to do with Tartarian structures and civilization. So it was a time of a different age where the elite structure got a hold of the information from the secret societies of how to direct energy beam frequency to shake up the earth, to create a disbalance in harmony. And that can take out any civilization eventually. So this is what happened to Tartaria. The Hyperboreans, they are also remnants of Lemuria and somewhat of Atlantis. They are more of a gregarian type of a civilization. They are farmers. They are creators of natural farming, natural sources on the planet, preserving nature. They are extremely intelligent. They have higher cranial capacity. They could reach up to 12 feet tall. Indeed, they were blondes, redheads. They had the ability to read people's minds and thought consciousness, to connect more on the soul level, whereas the Tartarians were more of downloaders of information and preserving information. The Hyperboreans were more of thought consciousness connection from mind to mind and preserving the land, farming, proper connection to humans, to animals, preserving the land. The Hyperboreans were more connected to the land, not so much advanced crystal technology, although they did have some of that. They were more nature-based, and they were on a huge island that is now impossible to find because it is protected and shielded. So Hyperboreans are still where they are, except people cannot find their island anymore because they do not want intruders interfering with their way of life. But In the ancient times, people could visit Hyperboreans, and Hyperboreans would send out their messengers to bring clean food, to bring information about the civilization. But when the Greeks came, all that stopped, and when Rome came, all that stopped. They closed off their island, so they became more remote and isolated, so that the outside world would not influence their civilization, much like the inner earth. The Lemurians, the Atlanteans, from the survivors of that catastrophe, created Telos, inner earth, Agartha, Shambhala. So did the Hyperboreans choose to close off their island. And that island was indeed near Europe. It is in the European region. It was quite spectacular and beautiful. It is much larger than England, much bigger. So they still work with thought consciousness, mind connection, and spirituality of consciousness evolution. Hyperboreans, some of them did go into inner earth in central Agartha. So they are also in Agartha, and they connect to different frequency of energies, what you call the golden rays, the blue rays. The Agarthans, the Hyperborean Agarthans, work with those energies. They seek to connect the spirit to the soul in a very thought consciousness balanced connection, more so than even the surface Hyperboreans at this time. So this is what Tartaria was. What was Hyperborea? Hyperboreans still exist on the surface of the planet. And they had actually one of the space ark ships land in their lands, and they were shown how to grow food in more nature-based ways with energy frequency, how to work with the elemental frequency of the dryad nature within their souls, because they are dryads. They are connected to nature. So the frequency of that ark ship showed them how to connect with their dryad elemental abilities more, to grow things from the earth, and how to create energetically clothing, sustainable ways of elemental energy working for manifestation as above, so below to the physical, from energy to physicality. They were shown how to do this, the surface Hyperboreans, in that space ark, because that ark was of a nature-based frequency of elemental energy, expanding out beings' elemental energy of the dryads connected to earth, to nature, to energy frequency of nature, of growing things, creating things energetically, into from energy to physicality. So those Hyperboreans on the island were very much connected to that space ark and what it taught them about their elemental abilities, how to expand those out. So this is some of the information about Tartaria and Hyperborea. There is much more in these histories. There's also Pangea, which was a huge landmass at one point. Then it separated as the beings wanted to explore individuality, physicality, individual thought consciousness. At one point, everyone lived as one on a huge landmass. Pangea and others that came before it. Then the land masses separated because these beings wanted to be more individual, to live in individual ways of life. Living as communities is important, and they were living as communities. It was a huge land mass, and it was consciousness connected together of everything, unity intertwined. But they wanted to feel individuality and separateness. So they branched off on their own, all these civilizations, the ancients, and that consciousness, desire, separated the land masses as well. So it's not just continental drift or tectonic plates separating. It is the individual consciousness of beings or collective consciousness that also shape the land masses of what the collective consciousness wishes to experience. So those creator beings at those times when all the land masses were together as one huge continent covering the earth, they wanted to experience individuality and separateness and live in smaller collectives. So they also influenced the land masses separating and shifting, because at that time they had higher connection to their abilities to influence the shifting of the earth, the crust, the oceans, the land masses, to create either togetherness or separation. They wanted to feel more individuality, so they took their collectives and spread out. When the continents separated according to their will, they spread out and felt in smaller collectives individuality and connection consciousness to who they were and evolved as a result. So there are intertwined connections here between ancient civilizations and the present as what Earth is shaped as now. I wanted to mention that as a preface of what happened even before Tartaria and Hyperborea. In these creator beings, humanoid galactics, and humans who lived in that collective on Pangea, and before that on the big continent before it separated. So there's many other names, not just Pangea before that, where it was a supercontinent, but then separated because they wanted to experience in smaller collectives soul evolution instead of one big collective as one. Because unity can come in many forms, as one consciousness, as many consciousnesses, many units of experience and expression of how creation expresses itself. So this also formed how the planet was back then and even now as a result. So thank you for your questions. And there's much more details, of course, about these civilizations. This is sort of the origins and who the beings were and what they did and what they had in terms of what they worked with as an explanation for your questions. Thank you, Source Creator. I appreciate it, and good information to know as a starter to what these civilizations were. Much appreciated. Many thank yous, and namaste.